We be clapping. Claude Monet. His full name was actually Oscar Claude Monet. Probably heard either of his name or the term Impressionism. But did you know he was actually just a chill guy? Or was he? Was he just a chill guy with occasional hardships? Or maybe was he up to something? Why he looked like a pirate for a little bit? And how did he afford huge house and gardens? Or was he just effed up like the rest of them? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Dude, chill out with the questions. So sit your buttocks down, grab some snacks, because we diving into the history of father of. Born in 1840, 14th of no shape November. So you know our boy was rocking one of these. Though born in Paris, he grew up in Normandy. Yeah, like the one from Call of Duty World War II. His family moved there when he was 5 years old. And since he grew up in like coastal city of
Le Havre.
this beauty captured his imagination from a young age. As it usually happens, one parent was more supportive than the other one. So his mom wanted him to pursue arts. His father, though, in a classic father move, wanted him to take over the family's business of supplying ships / grocery business. But our little Oscar was so good that at age 11, on April Fool's Day of 1851, entered
Le Havre.
secondary school of arts. And apparently he was quite apathetic as a student, just because he had the skills. But hey, kids are assholes anyways, especially if they are good at something. And now when I think about it, it kind of seems like a hidden human nature to be an asshole upon realizing you're good at something. So our little prick, at first not keen on learning, instead drew caricatures, which people liked a lot apparently, because at the age of 15 years old, our little Oscar was making a buck selling these. But it's not like he wasn't learning. Oh no. His first drawing teacher was none other than Jacques-François Ocard, known for being this teacher and being a student of some other famous guy. He was just hanging out with the right people, I guess. But hey, look, Monet made him into this little caricature. Isn't that adorable? You know what's not adorable though? Dead parent. Especially the one that supports you. So yeah, what I'm getting at is that his mother died when he was really young. And I'm actually mentioning this because it's one of the rare instances of an artist that didn't change his entire personality, his style, or plans for the future. In other words, he wasn't bitchy about it. Plus, he moved to live with his father and a rich auntie that supported his early artistic career. Cause well, what else wealthy widow in an 1800 has to do? Also, we have some of the wealthiest people in history alive right now. And yet, none of them have their own card painters? Shit, I'm digressing again. Leave a like so I'll stay on a goddamn topic. By the way, Oscar doing funny portraits does not sound like Claude, the guy famous for his landscapes. Fucking exactly. Talk about a glow up of a century, huh? Guy lived to like 86, so he had some time to evolve. So his landscape era started at 18 years old. He met a fellow artist, Eugène Bodin, whom encouraged Monet to develop his painting techniques and showed him in plein air, which is a fancy way of saying he just went outside to paint. And probably went like, yo, this is so cool. Yeah, it's cool and all. But have you thought, of maybe trying this outside? Yo! How do we know it was Bidon? Cause Monet said so. Monet was like really thankful for showing him the outside. Y'all should check it sometime too. It's awesome out there. But why it was such a crazy idea? It's 1800s, everything was a crazy idea back then. Despite hundreds of landscape paintings done throughout centuries, the idea of painting outside was apparently wild for a Victorian painter. But I don't know, for me, it's wild that it was wild concept for them. But alright, I'm gonna give you this one, art historians. The two of them were hanging out around Monet's city, and Bodin encouraged Monet to study the weather and the light changes. So hey, look at that. That little prick stopped being so pricky after all and actually studied some stuff. Not only that, from 1858 till 1860, he moved to Paris to study in Académie Suisse. And it was not your regular school. Founded in 1815 till it was demolished in 1905, it made all the famous French artists from that exact period. Amongst them, besides Monet of course, you could find his knockoff, Edouard Manet, and they knew each other, Paul Cézanne, Impressionist Cubist guy, Courbet, or even a knockoff of Picasso, Pissarro, with which Monet became besties. And of course, the thing that brought them was a mutual hatred. Nothing brings people together like mutual hatred, right? But what is that they didn't like so much? Think. What artists have problems with, usually ideologically? Of course, the art establishment. And if you know anything about art history, you know that means one thing. And in that specific case, they even organized first Impressionist exhibition in 1874, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So consider subscribing for more content like this. I know he would. And who's that handsome young man? That's our Oscar Claude Monet. He's so young and handsome, looking perfect for... So at age 20, he got drafted in the French Army of Africa. And I hope I don't need to explain why such thing existed. And also, some sources were saying he was studying after army, and some sources say he was studying before army. But overall, it doesn't really change shit, to be honest. So what the hell he was doing in there? He ended up in a light cavalry unit stationed in Algeria. And his pops was quite happy about it. He was like, maybe he'll rethink this whole art shtick. And Monet even promised to serve 7 years. But you'll never guess what happened. He did not spend 7 years there. And the beauty of Algeria kind of had an opposite effect to what his father hoped for. So first things first, Monet had only spent about a year on duty because he got sick and had to go back. Throughout the year, he had only few opportunities to paint and to sketch, making few portraits here and there and also some landscapes, but unfortunately none of the work survived till this day, so fuck you. I'm not gonna show anything. But as mentioned, Algeria itself turned out to be pretty inspiring after all. In Monet's own words, Algeria was full of color, light and warmth. After years, even recalling that it deeply affected him. So there's 1862 and Claude Monet is back in Paris. And this time, he joins private studio of a Swiss artist, Charles Gleyre, I don't know. Wait, Swiss artist in Paris? So Swiss people not only buy, but also do it? I'm honestly as surprised as you are. But the studio itself was shared among other artists like Frédéric Brasil, Alfred Sisley, and Pierre-Auguste Renoir. And all of them would help shape the future direction of art. So the gang like to take their stuff outside, not to paint, but to do immediate impressions of the landscape onto canvas, with the short, definite brush strokes focusing on light, movement, and color. But the gang didn't only go outside, they also painted in the studio, sometimes even with models. And around 1865, one of them caught Monet's eye. Her name was Camille Doncier, and you'll never guess, she was 18 and he was 25 when they met. So she was his muse, appeared in several Monet's paintings, including, but not limited to, life-sized Woman in a Green Dress from 1866. Huge painting Monet painted early in his artistic career in an attempt to gain recognition, which worked since painting was well received at the Salon of 1866. So the operation turned successful, as it did boost Monet's reputation, opening for him even more doors for his artistic career. The other most notable one was Woman in the Garden from 1867, in which she was not only model but also his mistress, and was probably pregnant on that one as she gave birth to their first son Jean the same year. Monet was visiting family at the time and had to go back to Paris for the birth of his child, but apparently his family did not approve of Camille and cut him off financially. And that was not a good time for Claude. In fact, it was as shitty as it gets. Because, you see, Monet's career had not taken off yet, and he struggled to financially support his family, had to relocate multiple times to avoid exhibition. Furthermore, either because of that or on top of that, he suffered from depression. And Monet also tried unsubscribing from life by jumping off a bridge into the river Seine. Don't worry though, he was a great swimmer and he survived without any physical harm. How do we know he just swam away though? 29th of June 1868, he wrote in a letter to Frederick Basile, "I was so upset yesterday that I was stupid enough to hurl myself into the river. Fortunately, no harm was done." And you can't convince me he was not a chill dude. Like, he literally tried to unalive himself, went, nope, that's fucking stupid. But thankfully, I'm a great swimmer. And it's true, it is fucking stupid. Thankfully, after surviving the attempt, fortune smiled upon Monet in the form of his very own Patreons. That, of course, helped him get better financially, so he could afford the place to live. Who were these noble people? Madame Louis Joachim Gulliver and her son, Monsieur Louis Joachim Gulliver. And I'm mentioning this because I could not find anything on them, and I've tried to understand why the fuck both of them have the same male names. But who the fuck knows with these rich assholes? Important part is that now Monet could grow as an artist, even officially marrying Camille in 1870. His family, still mad at the time, did not show up to the wedding. But hey, he had Gustave Courbet as a witness. And also, her fam showed up, giving them some money, though the money was assigned purely for Camille, in order to protect the money from Monet's creditors. And for a guy, that sounds like money. It's kind of funny that he struggled financially. Cause what a fucking loser, borrowing money so he could provide his family with food and roof over their head? Wait, is he a loser or the society's fucked? Anyhow, if you're a history nerd, you probably know what also happened in 1870. That's right, this time, Monet was like, fuck that, I'm not going to army again. Especially considering that this time they fought Germans, not colonizing. So Monet, at first, went to Papa and was like, see Paps, this bitch is now my legit wifey. So my kids are legit. Or what his father probably said. Aye, here's some money, now fuck off to London. And he did. And after that, his wife and kid joined him. And in London, he painted his wife overthinking the Red Book. In painting Meditation, Madame Monet sitting on sofa. And I don't know, I feel how proud he must have felt naming this painting. Then they went to Netherlands, and there, of course, he had to paint a windmill, amongst other things. But thankfully, the war ended within a year after Germany realized how to be a country. So in 1871, they moved back to France, specifically close / now part of Paris. And after that, he was unstoppable with this whole painting thing. Impression Sunrise. It's an 1872 painting capturing a view of the part of his hometown during early morning. And apparently, he cooked that beauty just in a few hours looking out from his hotel window. And I know you know this painting, but did you know why you know it? The title, Impression Sunrise. But wait, Impressionism as the term didn't exist before 1874, so that means, oh my god, the term Impressionism comes from the name of that little silly painting? Yeah, but that's not even the best part, as the term itself was ironic, as in shitty unfinished painting. And the term was coined by Louis Leroy after 1874 exhibition. Leroy was basically hostile art critic that regretted inspiring the name, as he thought most of the artists from the exhibition had nothing to do with Impressionism. Anyway, thanks for the name, asshole. Obviously, not all critics were like Leroy. Some even wrote about it as in a revolution in painting. But bad opinions might have influenced Monet more at the time, because in 1875, he returned to figurative painting, creating another impressionist icon, woman with a parasol, Madame Monet and her son. And this one is actually quite kawaii. But in 1876, anonymous Society of Painters, Sculptors, and Engravers. Wait, anonymous? Yup. That's how Monet and his friends call themselves before accepting the name Impressionists in 1877. Probably right after the third exhibition that took place on March 5th said year. And at this point, his career was booming. He was recognizable, made good money on paintings, and was waiting for his second son to be born. Just a chill guy having a perfect life. But life and perfect rarely go well together. So of course, can't have it too good. So obviously, something gotta go to shit. Year is 1878. Monet's wife had become seriously ill. And after giving birth to their second child, her health deteriorated even faster, and she was diagnosed with the womb cancer and died following year of 1879. Claude even created one last tribute to her. Now Claude, as a single father, went through some hardships, having to move once again to avoid creditors. Psych, it wasn't that bad, though he was a bit depressed because of Camille's death. It wasn't so bad after all. And it all started from a wealthy art collector that went bankrupt in 1877. Ernest Ernest and his wife Alice and their children moved together with Monet's and his family. So in fact, Alice was the one that helped Monet take care of his children after Camille's demise. And Ernest was living in Paris trying to unbankrupt himself when his wife and children lived with Monet, whom during the harsh times he recently gone through was working heavily to improve this whole Impressionist thing. And in 1882, he joined Impressionist exhibition for the last time, carefully selecting 7 paintings which depicted train stations and trains. And paintings were well received by critics, and the critics went like,
I like trains.
And due to people really liking trains at the time, Monet was able to rent whole-ass house with gardens in Giverny or something in 1883. And little did he know that this house and its garden would become source of his inspiration for like 40 years. He did not move there alone though. Besides his children, of course, Alice and her kids were also there. And despite her still being married to the other guy, that apparently in 1886 had enough of being cocked and demanded that Alice and their children return with them to Paris. But Alice was like, no, and stayed with Monet. So they both can do flowers and bees. Like literally, they really loved their garden. And said gardens, as we all know, gave Monet more inspiration to paint and improve. So in 1890, he could afford to buy the whole house alongside with gardens. And man, the 90s were the heck of a time for Monet. Firstly, in 1891, Alice's husband kicked the bucket, and in 1892, they got married. Career-wise, Claude began working on painting the same things in different light and weather conditions, like the famous haystacks, or trees, or this little cathedral that you probably saw. And you might have been confused, like, I saw this painting, it looked different. Is it a Mandela effect? Nope, he just painted plenty. And thanks to his works and his art dealer Paul, whom had been successfully selling his work, Monet began developing his gardens more, buying up more land and adding a greenhouse and then a second spacious studio. On top of that, he had been creating plans for his 7 gardeners with the instructions where, how, and what to plant. And among the land he was buying up, there was this little tiny pond filled with, you guessed it, water lilies. Yay, we got to the peak Impressionism, woo! So Claude's life, once again, was pretty much perfect. All the money and fame he could have wished for. That's almost like, no. Quick, subscribe. Everything goes to shit. Okay, it did not exactly went to shit, all the way at least. So in 1908, Monet started having problems with his vision, which is yikes for visual artists. Don't worry though, he had perfectly operable cataracts, which he had fixed after like 2 decades, and also destroyed / retouched lots of his paintings created during the cataracts, because apparently it had more reds, oranges, yellows, and purples, along with thicker brush strokes. Because he's so blurry and he could not distinguish cool tones well. But we'll be back to that after you comment Monet was a chill dude. Before being diagnosed, worse shit happened. And by worst, I mean Alice in 1911 and his oldest son in 1914. Both of which left Monet depressed. And on top of that, the diagnosis came in 1913. So he had to wear glasses. He was apparently wearing a size lens, which for all you photography nerds out there should be pretty interesting info. You should know size. But they were like, yo, we can operate. And he's like, no, you're not gonna operate on my eyes. And they were like, then you have to wear glasses. He was like, all right. So he wore glasses and apparently had to wear a patch. Therefore, he looked like a pirate for a little bit because he also had a long beard. But he was refusing the operation just for a bit, because in 1923, he got the operation, after which, besides destroying some work, he started using more blue, which some think he could see UV light now. First of all, wild claim. And second of all, I want to have accidental superpower after operation as well. What the fuck? Of course, he was too old to take part in the First World War. Although, after First World War finished, he gave French government a bunch of stuff and it was like, yay, great. Good job, guys. But by the time they fixed his eyesight, he was an 83-year-old man. And unfortunately, 3 years later, at the ripe age of 86 years old, he had passed away from lung cancer on December 5th, 1926, in his home, around paintings he made and beautiful gardens he left behind. At the end of his life, rather than becoming old man yelling at clouds, he was just a chill guy painting lilies in his garden.